Here's where we can fit you. Those words echoed in my mind as I stood frozen in the doorway of the damp basement, the cold air wrapping around me like an unwelcome embrace. My daughter Aubrey's voice had been so casual, so matter-of-fact, as if she were simply commenting on where to place a piece of furniture rather than her 60-year-old mother. The smell of mildew filled my nostrils as I stared at the concrete floor, water stains marking the walls, exposed pipes hanging from the low ceiling. This was where my daughter thought I belonged. Not in one of the 3 empty bedrooms upstairs. Not in the sunny guest room with the bay window. But here in the basement out of sight. "Mom!" Aubrey called from upstairs. "The movers need to know where to put your dresser." I blinked back tears, straightened my shoulders, and climbed the stairs with as much dignity as I could muster. "I'll show them," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. For the rest of the afternoon, I moved through the house like a ghost, directing movers, unpacking essentials, all while that moment played on repeat in my mind. Here's where we can fit you. As if I were an inconvenience. As if I were an afterthought. When evening came and the house finally quieted, I sat alone in the small bedroom I'd chosen for myself, far from the basement but still the smallest room in the house. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd never thought I'd need. "James Henderson's office," a friendly voice answered. "This is Wendy Miller," I said quietly, glancing at my closed door. "I need to speak with Mr. Henderson about removing my daughter's name from the deed to my new house." Later that night, as I lay in my unfamiliar bed, memories flooded back unbidden. The day my husband Michael died of a sudden heart attack when Aubrey was just 15. How I'd worked 2 jobs to maintain our standard of living, often coming home so exhausted I could barely speak. The night I'd found Aubrey crying over college applications, worried about the cost, and how I'd promised her she wouldn't have to worry, I would find a way. And I had. I'd taken out a second mortgage on our house. I'd dipped into my retirement savings. I'd sold Michael's beloved vintage car collection, each sale feeling like losing a piece of him all over again. But I'd done it with a smile, because Aubrey was worth every sacrifice. When she'd graduated from Northwestern with honors, the pride I'd felt had made every late night, every missed opportunity, every financial strain worth it. "You did it, Mom," she'd said then, hugging me tight. "We did it. We." That was how it had always been, Wendy and Aubrey against the world. Or so I'd thought. I remembered the day Aubrey had come to me, explaining her dream of buying a house, but lamenting the impossible down payment. "Property values are insane, Mom," she'd said, her expression defeated. "At this rate, I'll never own a home." The solution had seemed so obvious. I'd been rattling around in our family home for years, rooms gathering dust, memories both sustaining and haunting me. Why not sell it? We could buy a new place together. Somewhere smaller for me but with space for Aubrey to start her own family someday. "Are you sure?" she'd asked, eyes wide with hope. "It's your home, Mom." "Home is where we're together," I'd replied, believing it with all my heart. The sale of my house of 35 years had been quick, the market favorable. The new place, this place had seemed perfect. A 4-bedroom colonial with a lovely garden I'd already envisioned nurturing back to life. Now lying in the dark, I realized I'd misunderstood everything. Aubrey hadn't seen this as our house. She'd seen it as her house, with a convenient space in the basement where she could fit her mother. My chest tightened with a pain that had nothing to do with physical ailments. After everything I'd given up, after every sacrifice I'd made, was this all I meant to my daughter? An afterthought to be tucked away in a basement? Silent tears tracked down my cheeks as I stared at the unfamiliar ceiling. Tomorrow I would speak with James Henderson properly. Tomorrow I would begin to take back what was mine. Not just the house but my dignity, my independence, my self-respect. Because if Aubrey's casual cruelty had taught me anything, it was that I had spent far too long putting everyone else first. And maybe, just maybe, it was finally time to put myself first. The morning sun streamed through unfamiliar curtains as I awoke in my new bedroom. For a moment disorientation clouded my mind. Where was the creaking floorboard I'd grown accustomed to avoiding? Where was the view of Mrs. Peterson's magnolia tree that had greeted me every morning for decades? Reality crashed back with jarring clarity. This wasn't my home. This was Aubrey's home, where I had been allocated a space like an unwanted heirloom. I dressed slowly, choosing a blue cardigan Michael had always loved. Touching the worn fabric gave me strength as I prepared to face another day of pretending I hadn't heard my daughter's cruel words. Downstairs, Aubrey was already at the kitchen island, tapping away at her laptop, a half-eaten bagel beside her. "Morning, Mom," she said without looking up. "Coffee's in the pot." "Thank you," I replied, pouring myself a cup. I noticed she'd already arranged the kitchen. My vintage cookie jar now hidden in a corner cabinet, her sleek appliances taking center stage on the countertops. "I made a list," Aubrey said, sliding a paper toward me. "House rules to keep things running smoothly." I stared at the paper. House rules. Like I was a teenager or a troublesome roommate. Quiet hours between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Please schedule guests in advance. Main floor bathroom is for guests only. Kitchen needs to be cleaned immediately after use. Weekly cleaning schedule posted on refrigerator. My hand trembled slightly as I set down my coffee. Rules. Aubrey shrugged. Just so we don't get in each other's way. "Oh, and I've set up a shared calendar for the house. I need to know when you're coming and going." "I see," I said quietly, though what I wanted to say was much louder, much angrier. What I wanted to ask was, when did I become someone who needed a permission slip to live her life? Instead, I nodded and took my coffee to the small sunroom at the back of the house, the one space that didn't yet feel claimed by Aubrey's presence. As I sat there watching birds flit around the neglected garden, I thought back to all the moments I'd missed Aubrey's true nature. The graduation party where she'd forgotten to thank me in her speech. The way she'd rolled her eyes when I couldn't immediately transfer money for her semester abroad. The Christmas she'd spent more time on her phone than talking to me. I'd explained them all away. She was young. She was busy. She was establishing her independence. But maybe the truth was simpler and harder to face. I had raised a daughter who saw me as nothing more than a convenient resource. That afternoon, while Aubrey was at work, I began unpacking the boxes assigned to my room. So few things had made the cut in the move. Aubrey had insisted we declutter before moving, which had resulted in most of my possessions being donated or discarded. In the bottom of a box marked Mom's Miscellaneous, I found a photo album I hadn't seen in years. The leather cover was cracked with age, the gold lettering faded. Our family. I opened it with reverent hands. There was Michael, young and handsome, holding baby Aubrey with a mixture of terror and adoration. There I was, exhausted but radiant, gazing at them both like they were miracles. Page after page documented our journey. Aubrey's first steps, family vacations, school plays, the three of us always smiling, always together. Until we weren't. The later pages show just Aubrey and me. Her high school graduation, me standing proudly beside her. Dark circles under my eyes from working double shifts to afford her prom dress. Her college acceptance, me behind the camera, no one thinking to take a picture with me in it. Her first apartment, me helping carry boxes. Unacknowledged in the background of someone else's snapshot. The progression was clear, painful. I had slowly become less central to her life, then peripheral, and now an inconvenience to be stored in a basement. My meeting with James Henderson was scheduled for tomorrow. What would I say? That my daughter saw me as little more than furniture? That I'd given everything only to be treated as nothing? The front door slammed, startling me from my thoughts. Aubrey's quick footsteps crossed the foyer, followed by a man's deeper voice. Jason, her boyfriend. I hadn't been told to expect him. "Mom," Aubrey called. "Where are you?" I closed the album and took a steadying breath. "In my room," I answered. "I'll be right down." As I placed the album back in the box, my fingers brushed against something else. A small velvet box containing the pearl earrings Michael had given me on our first anniversary. I'd planned to give them to Aubrey someday, when she appreciated their value beyond the monetary. Now I slipped them into my pocket. Some treasures weren't meant to be given away after all. When I came downstairs, Aubrey was showing Jason around the house like a proud new owner. Which I supposed she was. I was introduced as an afterthought, my presence explained away with a casual, "Mom's staying with us for now." For now. As if my being there was temporary. As if this house, which my life savings had largely paid for, wasn't meant to be my home too. "We're thinking of turning the basement into a home gym," Jason said, arm slung possessively around Aubrey's waist. "It's got great potential." "The basement." I echoed, my voice faint. Yeah, Aubrey replied, not meeting my eyes. We figure it's wasted space otherwise. Wasted space. The place where she had suggested I belong. I smiled tightly, excused myself, and retreated back to my small bedroom. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I fingered the pearl earrings in my pocket, their smooth surface comforting against my skin. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. Tomorrow I would take the first step toward reclaiming not just my financial investment but my sense of self. Because after a lifetime of putting Aubrey first, it was finally time to put myself first. And that meant acknowledging a painful truth. Sometimes the people who should love us the most are the ones who value us the least. The meeting with James Henderson had been straightforward and sobering. As we'd reviewed the property documents, his expression had grown increasingly concerned. Mrs. Miller, this arrangement is heavily weighted in your daughter's favor, he'd said, tapping the deed with his pen. You contributed 80% of the purchase price. Yet ownership is split 50-50. I'd nodded, the reality of my situation settling into my bones. Can it be changed? Yes, but it will take time. I'll begin the paperwork today. Now, 3 days later, I found myself tiptoeing around my own house, careful not to disturb Aubrey's carefully arranged decor or break any of her numerous house rules. The small bedroom I'd chosen still felt temporary, like a hotel room rather than a place to call my own. It was Saturday afternoon, and Aubrey had invited Jason over for dinner. I'd offered to cook, a peace offering of sorts, and was chopping vegetables when they arrived. They barely acknowledged me before disappearing upstairs, their muffled laughter drifting down the hallway. I focused on preparing the roast, Michael's favorite recipe. Cooking had always been therapeutic for me, the methodical chopping and measuring a form of meditation. I was so absorbed that I didn't immediately notice when their voices grew louder, more animated. Perfect timing, really, Jason was saying as they descended the stairs. The market's hot right now. I know, but it's complicated, Aubrey replied, her voice lowered but still audible from my position in the kitchen. We have to be smart about this. I remained still, knife poised over the cutting board. How long do you think before we can make the move? Jason asked. There was a pause, then Aubrey's voice even quieter. A year, maybe less. Once Mom's settled in an assisted living place, we can sell the house, use her equity to upgrade, and still have plenty left over. The knife clattered from my hand, striking the tile floor with a metallic ring. The conversation in the hallway stopped abruptly. Mom! Aubrey called. You okay? I bent to retrieve the knife, my hands trembling. Fine, I called back, my voice betraying nothing of the storm inside me. Just drop something. Assisted living. They were planning to put me away, to take the house I'd paid for, and use my own money to upgrade. The coldness of it stole my breath. When they entered the kitchen, I was stirring the sauce with mechanical movements, my back to them. Smells amazing, Mrs. Miller, Jason said, his charm feeling predatory now. Thank you, I replied, not turning around. It'll be ready in about an hour. Great, Aubrey said. We're going to watch a movie in the den. Call us when it's done. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Only when I heard the den door close did I allow myself to grip the counter, knuckles white, as the full weight of their betrayal crashed over me. Dinner was excruciating. I pushed food around my plate while Aubrey and Jason discussed their jobs, friends, and future plans. Plans I now knew involved disposing of me like an inconvenient piece of furniture. Mom, you've barely touched your food, Aubrey noted, her concern so convincing that for a moment I almost believed it was genuine. Are you feeling okay? I forced a smile. Just tired. The move has been more exhausting than I expected. You should rest more, she said, reaching across to pat my hand. At your age, you need to be careful. At my age. As if 60 made me decrepit, incapable, in need of being settled in an assisted living place. You're right, I agreed mildly. In fact, I think I'll turn in early tonight. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, no longer able to contain the tears that had threatened all evening. They spilled hot and fast down my cheeks, my shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I'd spent my whole life believing that love was measured in sacrifice. That if I gave enough, worked hard enough, surrendered enough of myself, Aubrey would value me. But I'd been wrong. Terribly, devastatingly wrong. Through bleary eyes, I looked around the bare little room that contained what was left of my life. The antique jewelry box Michael had given me on our 5th anniversary. The small stack of books I hadn't been able to part with. The photo of the three of us, Michael, Aubrey, and me, taken on Aubrey's 10th birthday, our last as a complete family. But there was something else in the room too. Something I hadn't allowed myself to recognize until now. My own culpability. I had taught Aubrey that my needs came last. I had shown her that I was willing to sacrifice everything for her happiness. And now she believed that was her right, to take and take until there was nothing left of me. I wiped my eyes and took a deep, steadying breath. The revelation hurt, but it also offered clarity. This wasn't just about a house or money. It was about years of enabling behavior that had created the entitled young woman, who now saw me as nothing more than a means to her ends. As painful as the truth was, it was also liberating. Because now that I knew better, I could do better. I could change the dynamics of our relationship, enforce boundaries, demand respect. Or, if necessary, I could walk away entirely. Tomorrow I would call James Henderson again. Not just about the house, but about all of my assets. I would secure my future. A future that wouldn't include being warehoused in some facility, while Aubrey redecorated my home. But tonight I would let myself grieve, for the daughter I thought I had, for the relationship I'd imagined we shared, and for all the years I'd spent prioritizing someone who saw me as nothing more than a stepping stone to the life she wanted. The truth had been revealed. And though it broke my heart, it also set me free. "All signatures must be original, Mrs. Miller," James Henderson said, sliding the documents across his polished desk. "I've highlighted where you need to sign." 2 weeks had passed since I'd overheard Aubrey and Jason's plans. 2 weeks of pretending I knew nothing, of smiling through dinners, of following house rules that diminished me a little more each day. "This revokes the power of attorney you previously granted to Aubrey," James explained, pointing to another document. "And this one establishes the new ownership percentages for the house. 80% you, 20% Aubrey, reflecting your actual financial contributions." I signed each document with a steady hand, feeling stronger with each stroke of the pen. "What happens next?" I asked, handing the papers back. "We file these with the county recorder's office. Takes about 2 weeks to process. Then I'll notify Aubrey." He hesitated. "She won't be happy." "No," I agreed, "she won't." On the drive home, I took a detour through a neighborhood I'd always admired, Willowbrook Gardens, a collection of charming single-story homes with well-kept yards. As I slowed near one with a for sale sign, an idea began to form. I wasn't just reclaiming my financial security. I was reclaiming my life. And maybe that meant creating a new one entirely. At home, I found a note from Aubrey on the kitchen counter. "Mom working late. Please use back entrance after 7. Having colleagues over." The back entrance. Like a service provider rather than a resident. Instead of retreating to my room as I might have before, I decided to take a walk. The early summer evening was mild, the neighborhood still new to me. At the corner, I noticed an elderly woman struggling with 2 large grocery bags. "Can I help you with those?" I offered, approaching her. She looked up, relief washing over her face. "Oh, would you? My arthritis is acting up something fierce today." I took the heavier bag, and we walked together to her house 3 doors down from mine. "I'm Margaret Wheeler," she said as we reached her porch. "I've seen you moving in with your daughter." "Wendy Miller," I replied. "And actually, we bought the house together." Margaret invited me in for tea, and I found myself accepting. Her home was cozy and lived in, walls covered with family photos, shelves lined with well-worn books. "My husband passed 12 years ago," she explained, pouring tea into delicate cups. "The children wanted me to move in with them, but I said, 'No thank you, I'm staying put.' They didn't like it, but they adjusted." I smiled, warmed by her independent spirit. "How did you know they were wrong?" "Wrong?" Margaret's eyebrows rose. "They weren't wrong for them. They were wrong for me. There's a difference." She studied me over her teacup. "Are you where you want to be, Wendy?" The question was simple, but it pierced straight to my heart. Was I where I wanted to be? In a house where I was expected to use the back door? Where my future included being settled into assisted living so my daughter could sell my investment? "No," I admitted, the word surprisingly freeing. "I'm not." Margaret nodded sagely. Then that's your answer. When I returned home, Aubrey's colleagues were gathered in the living room, wine glasses in hand, laughter spilling into the hallway. I entered through the front door, walking past the surprise on their faces. Mom, Aubrey said, her smile strained. I left you a note about using the back entrance. I must have missed it, I replied pleasantly. Don't mind me. I'm just heading upstairs. Later that night, Aubrey knocked on my door, her expression tight with controlled anger. Mom, when I leave notes, I expect you to follow them. You embarrassed me tonight. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the little girl I'd raised, but the woman she'd become. Someone who thought nothing of relegating her mother to a basement or planning to ship her off to a facility. I'm sorry you feel embarrassed, I said calmly. But this is my home too, Aubrey. I won't be using the back door like some unwelcome guest. Her eyes widened, unused to any resistance from me. That's not fair. This is my house. That I paid for, I finished quietly. 80% of it, in fact. The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? We'll discuss it another time. Good night, Aubrey. I closed the door gently but firmly, my heart racing not with fear, but with a strange exhilaration. It was the first boundary I'd set in years. Over the next few days, I continued my quiet revolution. I joined Margaret's gardening club. I reclaimed my cookbooks from the boxes Aubrey had relegated to the garage. I called old friends I'd lost touch with, making lunch dates and theater plans. Each small act of independence seemed to irritate Aubrey more. She began monitoring me closely, questioning where I'd been, commenting on how much I was spending. Are you sure you should be going out so much, Mom? She asked one evening as I prepared to meet Margaret for a neighborhood association meeting. You're not as young as you used to be. I'm 60, not 90, I replied, applying lipstick in the hallway mirror. And the fresh air does me good. She frowned. I'm just worried about you overtaxing yourself. What she was really worried about, I knew, was losing control. Every independent choice I made undermined the narrative she'd created, of a feeble mother who needed her guidance, her rules, and eventually, her decision to place me in assisted living. I began documenting everything: Aubrey's comments, her rules, her attempts to isolate me. I kept a small notebook hidden beneath my mattress, recording dates, times, exact wording. I wasn't sure yet how or when I would use this information, but instinct told me to preserve it. James called to confirm the paperwork had been filed. The notification to Aubrey will go out next week, he said. Are you prepared for her reaction? As prepared as I can be, I replied. That evening, I visited the for sale house in Willowbrook Gardens. It was perfect. A 2-bedroom cottage with a sun-filled kitchen and a garden ready for love. The realtor, sensing my interest, became enthusiastic. The sellers are motivated, she explained. They've already moved cross-country for retirement. I'd like to make an offer, I heard myself say. Contingent on the sale of my current property. As I signed the preliminary paperwork, I felt no doubt, only certainty. I was done being an afterthought in my own life. Done being someone to fit into a basement or an institution. It was time for Aubrey to learn that some lessons come with a price. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday. I was deadheading roses in the front garden, a skill Margaret had been teaching me, when the mail carrier handed me the envelope directly. Needs a signature, he explained, holding out his electronic pad. I knew what it was. James had called to warn me. The official notification of the property deed changes, addressed to Aubrey. I signed for it, tucked it into my pocket, and continued gardening, my heart pounding against my ribs. Later, I placed the unopened envelope on the kitchen counter where Aubrey would see it when she came home. Then I went to my room and waited. The front door slammed at 5:42 p.m. I heard Aubrey moving through the house, dropping her keys, opening the refrigerator. Then silence the moment she saw the letter. More silence. The sound of paper tearing. Then footsteps, hard and fast, storming up the stairs. My door flew open without a knock. Aubrey stood in the doorway, the letter clutched in her hand, her face contorted with fury. What the hell is this? She demanded, waving the paper. 80-20 ownership split? Revocation of power of attorney? What have you done? I rose slowly from my chair, keeping my voice steady. I've corrected a mistake. The house is now divided according to our actual financial contributions. Without even talking to me? You went behind my back. Like you went behind mine when you planned to put me in assisted living and sell this house? I asked quietly. The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? I heard you and Jason. I know your plans, Aubrey. I know everything. She took a step back, momentarily thrown, but recovered quickly. You were eavesdropping on a private conversation? I was in the kitchen making dinner for you, I corrected. You weren't exactly discreet. Her strategy shifted instantly from outrage to dismissal. Mom, you misunderstood. Jason and I were just discussing possibilities far in the future. We're worried about you living alone when you get older. I'm 60, not incapacitated. And I've been living alone since your father died. I managed just fine until you convinced me to sell my house. For us, she exploded. I did it for us. So we could both have a nice place to live. No, I said, my voice hardening. You did it for you. The basement comment made that clear from day one. Aubrey flinched, then rallied. One comment, and you're punishing me like this? That's so petty and vindictive. It wasn't just one comment. It was the house rules, the back entrance, the constant monitoring, the plans to ship me off so you could upgrade. It's been a pattern, Aubrey, and I'm done enabling it. She stalked to the window, her back to me. So this is some kind of revenge? You're changing the deed to get back at me. Not revenge, I said. Self-preservation. This house was meant to be my home too. Not somewhere I'm barely tolerated until you decide I'm inconvenient. She whirled around, eyes blazing. After everything I've done for you? All the times I've included you, checked on you, made sure you weren't alone. I laughed. The sound so hollow it startled us both. What exactly have you done for me, Aubrey? Name one thing that wasn't ultimately for your own benefit. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. That's what I thought, I said softly. This is so unfair. Her voice trembled. You've always been like this, keeping score, tracking every little thing I do wrong. That's not true, and you know it. I've spent my entire life putting you first. I worked 2 jobs after your father died so you wouldn't feel the loss financially. I emptied my retirement account to pay for your college. I sold my home, the place full of memories with your father, so you could have this house. Which you're now taking away, she shot back. I'm not taking anything away. I'm establishing clear boundaries. The house is still partially yours. I'm just ensuring you can't dispose of me and my investment whenever it's convenient. She crossed her arms, sulking like the teenager she'd once been. So what happens now? You're just going to hold this over my head forever. I sighed, suddenly exhausted by the drama, the anger, the years of thankless sacrifice. No, Aubrey. I'm moving out. That caught her off guard. What? I've made an offer on a house in Willowbrook Gardens. Once it's accepted, I'll be putting my share of this house on the market. You can't do that. Real panic flashed across her face. You wouldn't even have enough for a down payment without selling your share here first. I kept some money back from the sale of my old house, I admitted. Just enough for a small down payment. I never told you because I knew you'd find a way to spend it. The shock on her face was almost comical. For the first time in her adult life, Aubrey was seeing me as a separate person with my own agenda, not just an extension of her needs. This is insane, she whispered. What about us? What about our family? What family, Aubrey? The one where I use the back door? Where I'm hidden in the basement? Where I'm shipped off to assisted living when I'm no longer useful? That's not family. That's exploitation. She recoiled as if I'd slapped her. Tears sprang to her eyes, real ones this time, not the manipulative displays I'd seen so often. You don't mean that. You can't. I do, I said, my voice gentle but firm. And it breaks my heart. But you've left me no choice. She stared at me, this daughter I'd raised, this stranger I barely recognized. So that's it? You're just going to abandon me because of one misunderstanding. I'm not abandoning you, Aubrey. I'm choosing myself. There's a difference. She turned and fled the room, slamming the door behind her. I sank onto the bed, trembling with adrenaline and grief. The confrontation had gone exactly as expected, yet I took no pleasure in being right. That night, I heard her crying in her room. The sound pierced my heart, but I resisted the urge to go to her, to comfort her, to smooth everything over as I always had. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions. Even when, especially when, that someone is your child. 8 months later, I stood in my kitchen, my own kitchen, arranging daisies in a blue glass vase. Through the window, I could see my garden coming to life, early spring bulbs pushing through the soil I'd carefully amended over the winter. My little house in Willowbrook Gardens had turned out to be everything I'd hoped for and more. 2 cozy bedrooms, one for me and one converted into a reading room with my books finally unpacked and displayed. A kitchen where I baked cookies for the neighborhood children. A small patio where I hosted the garden club's monthly meetings. It hadn't been easy getting here. The sale of my portion of the house with Aubrey had been tense and protracted. She tried everything. Tears, accusations, financial obstructions, but James Henderson had guided me through each challenge with steady patience. In the end, she bought me out with Jason's help, paying less than market value but enough for me to settle comfortably here, with a modest nest egg besides. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. Margaret stood on my porch, a basket of fresh scones in her arms. "Ready for the garden club?" she asked, bustling inside. "I've been experimenting with Mary's recipe. Tell me honestly if they're any good." I laughed, taking the basket. "Your baking is always delicious, Margaret." Over the past months, Margaret had become more than a neighbor. She was a true friend, the kind I'd never allowed myself to cultivate when Aubrey was my whole world. Through her, I'd met other women in the neighborhood, joined the local theater support group, even started volunteering at the community center teaching children to cook. "Robert's coming to the spring festival," Margaret mentioned casually, arranging napkins for our guests. "He was asking if you'd be there." I felt a flush warm my cheeks. Robert Collins was a widower who'd moved to the neighborhood 3 months ago. We'd met at a community potluck, bonded over a shared love of old movies, and had been cautiously circling each other ever since. "I told him I would," I admitted. "We might meet for coffee afterward." Margaret's smile was knowing but kind. "Good. You deserve some happiness, Wendy." The garden club meeting was lively, full of plans for the neighborhood spring planting and the upcoming festival. As the women chatted around my dining table, I felt a fullness in my chest that had nothing to do with the scones and everything to do with belonging. These women saw me, really saw me, not as someone's mother or widow or obligation, but as Wendy Miller, a woman with value and voice. After everyone left, I was rinsing teacups when my phone rang. The screen displayed a name I hadn't seen in months. Aubrey. My hand hovered over the phone. We'd had minimal contact since the move, terse text messages about mail forwarding, a strained conversation at Christmas, a birthday card with a gift certificate inside but no personal message. Finally I answered. "Hello, Mom." Her voice sounded strange, smaller somehow. "Are you busy?" "Just cleaning up after a garden club meeting." "Is everything okay?" A pause. "Can I come see you?" "I'm actually nearby." 20 minutes later, my doorbell rang again. When I opened it, Aubrey stood on my porch, looking uncertain and oddly diminished without her usual confidence. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. She entered hesitantly, glancing around the house with curiosity. "It's nice," she offered. "Cozy." "Thank you. Would you like some tea?" She nodded, following me to the kitchen. "Your garden looks good." "It's coming along." I busied myself with the kettle, giving us both a moment to adjust to this strange new reality, me in my home, her as the visitor. "Jason and I broke up," she blurted as I set a steaming mug before her. I sat down across from her. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be. He was." She trailed off, stirring her tea absently. "Well, let's just say he had plans for our house that didn't include me long-term either." I absorbed this without comment. There was a certain poetic justice to it, but I took no pleasure in her pain. "The thing is," she continued, her voice unsteady, "I've been doing a lot of thinking since you left, about the way I treated you, the things I said and did." I waited, neither encouraging nor discouraging her confession. "I was entitled and selfish," she admitted, not meeting my eyes. "I took you for granted. Worse than that, I treated you like you didn't matter." Yes, I agreed quietly. You did. She flinched at my directness but nodded. I thought I was justified. That I was owed your sacrifice because you're my mother. It didn't even occur to me that you might have needs or dreams of your own. Tears welled in her eyes, but these weren't the manipulative tears I'd seen so often. These seemed genuine, wrenched from someplace deeper. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I did wrong. And I'm truly sorry. I studied her face, searching for signs of the old Aubrey, the entitlement, the calculation, the subtle manipulation. But all I saw was honest regret. Thank you for saying that, I said finally. It means a lot to hear. She wiped her eyes, looking around the kitchen again. You seem happy here. I am, I replied. I've made good friends. I'm involved in the community. I'm even taking a watercolor class at the senior center. That's good. She hesitated, then asked, do you think we could, would it be okay if I visited sometimes? Just to talk, maybe have lunch occasionally. The old Wendy would have jumped at this opening, eager to repair our relationship at any cost. But I wasn't that woman anymore. We can try, I said carefully. But there would have to be boundaries, Aubrey. Clear ones. She nodded quickly. Of course. Whatever you're comfortable with. And I need to know this isn't about money or getting something from me. That it's just about rebuilding a relationship. It is, she insisted. I promise. We talked a while longer, tentatively exploring this new terrain between us. When she left, we hugged briefly, awkwardly, but it felt like a beginning of sorts. The next morning, I celebrated my 61st birthday surrounded by my new friends. Margaret had organized a surprise brunch in my garden, complete with mimosas and a cake decorated with sugar flowers that mirrored the blooms in my flower beds. Robert came, bringing me a vintage poster from Casablanca that he'd found at an estate sale. The garden club presented me with new pruning shears and gloves. Even my old colleague Janet, who I'd reconnected with after the move, drove in from the city bearing gifts and hugs. As I looked around at these people who had come into my life only recently yet valued me so deeply, I felt a profound sense of peace. Aubrey sent a text. Happy birthday, Mom. Thinking of you today. No demands, no expectations, just an acknowledgement. Later, as the party wound down and my guests began to leave, Margaret lingered to help with cleanup. 61 looks good on you, she said, nudging me gently. Much better than 60 did. I laughed, thinking about all that had changed in a single year. Last year I was living someone else's life. This year I'm living my own. Margaret nodded, understanding perfectly. The best gift you can give yourself. She was right. After decades of putting everyone else first, I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. That my life was valuable not because of what I gave to others, but because it was mine. My choices. My happiness. My time. And at 61, I had plenty of living left to do.